Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Blaise XPerience once again. I am your host, Derreck, as always, and we are back for episode 74 today. And episode 74 is a really cool episode. We're back to talk more State of Decay once again, but this time we're actually going to talk about the newest patch notes for State of Decay, patch notes 7.0. And these are the patch notes that release alongside the Choose Your Own Apocalypse update. So when people are hearing this, they're going to hear this on Friday the 29th of March. And basically, by the time people hear this, they're already going to have this out, and they're already going to be playing Nightmare Mode. They're already going to be enjoying Nightmare Mode. But we're recording this before the patch notes actually release, and basically we're going to go through and talk about the patch notes, find out some of the unique things that are in there, find out some of the things that are maybe look a little bit more hidden that people might not understand as well, and just talk through them all. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But before we get into that, real quick, the next podcast I'll be doing will be releasing Saturday, April 6th. So we'll be returning to Saturdays once again. And this podcast is either going to be on the new release, Generation Zero, or it's going to be the next installment in our Dead by Daylight series. So whatever one it's not, that episode will be the week after that, basically. And then our next stream is going to be Sunday, 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be either streaming State of Decay 2 or returning to Generation Zero. Most likely it's going to be Generation Zero just because by the time you're hearing this, I'm already going to have a couple of streams in the Nightmare Mode for State of Decay, so I will probably do my second stream for Generation Zero on that Sunday. And then I'll probably get back into State of Decay on the Tuesday following that. But without further ado, we do have a guest here with us today. Back with us on the podcast. You did hear him on the anniversary show for a short segment, and you actually have heard him a couple times on different episodes. Please welcome back Undead Labs senior designer, Geoffrey Card. How are you, Geoffrey?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good.
It's nice to have you back on the podcast.
Oh, it's nice to be here. I just had an enormous lunch, so hopefully I won't be belching too loudly into the microphone.
I'm sure people won't mind too much. the info will be good enough.
Now you can just imagine what that would be like.
Exactly. Plus, I'd edit it out anyway, so.
As far as the audience knows, I did it several times over the course of the podcast.
Yes, exactly. But we're here to talk about the new patch for State of Decay. By the time people are hearing this, Nightmare Mode and Dread Zone are both out, and I think they're going to be enjoying it. I think it's going to be a great release.
We've been pretty excited to get this thing out for a long time now, so it's fun to be able to finally talk about it in detail and sort of reveal all the little bits that are going into it at the same time, because we've got the Choose Your Own Apocalypse update, but we're also always trying to add things and improve things with the game, and so I guess, this episode we're going to go through all the stuff that isn't part of the new difficulty modes.
Exactly, and, I've read through these patch notes, pretty brief glance, and there's some really key hidden gems in here that I think are going to make players really happy. So on top of the Choose Your Own Apocalypse, you get all the stuff in this patch that is going to really help the game forward. So I really love this patch.
Oh, thank you. I'm really looking forward to seeing how people think of it.
Yeah, I think they're going to love it. You have a lot of community crests in here, and we can kind of start right there. So the first category we're going to talk about is community management. And one of the first for community crests that's actually on here is the new Red Talon recruits can no longer receive the backup Good Example hero bonus because it's kind of pathetic compared to the unique Red Talon ones. So you want to kind of elaborate on that a little more?
Yeah, so I saw somebody on our Discord today posting a picture of one of their Red Talon characters, and I saw that they had the Good Example hero bonus, and I was like, oh man, if they just waited just a little bit longer, they would have had a better one. Because, so the way it works is, each of the traits in the game has the potential to link that character to a particular hero bonus. And so when we're generating a character, they have a certain list of traits, and each of those traits has a hero bonus, and then we randomly choose which hero bonus they're going to have. But not every single trait in the game has a hero bonus associated with it. And so it's possible, if you're extremely unlucky, to get 3 traits, none of which have a hero bonus. And so when that happens, we have a backup hero bonus, which is the Good Example hero bonus. And that's the one that you get if your character randomly didn't get another kind. The problem is, that was also happening with the Red Talon guys. They were randomly, every time it was generating a Red Talon character, it was randomly choosing whether to give them the hero bonus we intended or to give them Good Example. And so you ended up with a lot of Red Talon characters having one of the more pathetic hero bonuses in the game. So that's over now. They should always be getting appropriate Red Talon unique hero bonuses. You shouldn't be seeing Good Example anymore.
Which is awesome. Do you want to refresh people what Good Example actually does and why it might not be worthy?
I'm trying to remember now. It was just like a morale bonus or something, wasn't it?
I believe so. Yes, I actually did that whole podcast recently, I think, but I can't remember. I can't remember exactly what it was.
It's deliberately something not very impressive because it is for characters who didn't happen to show up with a particularly interesting one. A lot of the times, we want the hero bonuses to feel very themed with the attitude of the character. And so the ones that had really strong, a sense of, oh, I know who this character is, we wanted all of those to be associated with specific traits about the character's background. But this one, good example, is just such a straightforward thing. Anybody could do this. That's right. Why we threw it in as the backup.
Yeah, like something like sleeping in shifts is such a great, hero bonus to have, and I love that hero bonus.
Yeah, but like if somebody has got sleeping in shifts, you want to look at their, at their traits and see, oh, that's why they're good at sleeping in shifts because they used to be a trucker or something,
Or like they used to, always live outdoors, or like what you never know.
Yeah, exactly. But one thing that I want to point out about these patch notes is a lot of them start with the heading community request. If folks go to our website and read them themselves, they'll see community request at the head of some of the bullets. And we actually got that from the Dead Cells team. This is something they do with their patch notes, which is they call out the ideas and the bugs and the fixes that were inspired by comments they were getting from the community, because they really wanted to not just fix things for the community, but let the community know that they were listening. And so we're trying to do the same thing. We want people to know that we're paying attention to the feedback that they're giving us. And so this is one where, players were actually, reporting to us that their Red Talon guys were getting the good example hero bonus way too much. And we didn't actually realize that was going on until people in the community called it out to us. And so we want to give credit where credit's due. And people found that, and we realized we needed to fix it. And so, so you shouldn't be having that anymore.
And that's awesome. I think I can speak for the community here, where we really appreciate, Undead Labs actually taking our community requests and, setting those forward, because there's a lot of studios that don't really do that as often. So, definitely appreciate that.
We can't always do, what people want. Sometimes there's technical constraints or other reasons why we just can't do something people ask for. But whenever we can, we'd like to be able to do it.
Definitely. And just as an aside too, I did check, and I actually did the podcast on the Enclave bonuses. The hero bonuses I haven't done it yet, so that's why it wasn't fresh in my mind. So that will be a later podcast still to come. But another community crest that happened was your follower is now treated as a high priority character by the population management system and will no longer wink out of existence when you approach a base full of people. Yeah,
that was kind of a funny, embarrassing one. So we can't actually keep a community of 10 or 11 characters hanging around your base all the time with all of their AI running and stuff. It's too much, with all the other things that could be happening, zombies and freaks coming in from the outside. It would just be too much AI. And so we actually have a system that culls characters and has them not actually appear around the base. And, the problem was, your character, of course, never gets culled out. And if you are trying to, say, exile someone, or, there's a particular character you have to talk to, they're always listed as high priority and they never get culled. But we forgot to include your current follower on that list. And so it was possible players could actually walk up to their base, and if their base was full of people, their follower could just wink out of existence, because suddenly, instead of trying to simulate only 2 characters running around, suddenly we're trying to simulate 12 characters running around, and they would have to get rid of some. And so your follower would just vanish. And it was ridiculous. And so that shouldn't be happening anymore.
Yeah, that kind of sounds like what I heard you mention on stream before with the first game, where you had a community of 30 people. The system just couldn't handle all 30 of the map at once, basically.
Yeah, so we've always been limited to around like 6 characters hanging around the base in both iterations in the franchise. And so this was that system kind of going wrong a little bit, but hopefully it should be better now.
Awesome. But another change is we improved the camera behavior when switching to a character within the base to prevent it from getting stuck in its frozen state.
Yeah, so I never actually saw that one happening.
I didn't either,
This is one where my job was recording the fix in the patch notes and not necessarily have anything to do with building it. But what people told me was that there was just a certain weird set of circumstances where, if you switch to a character in a certain situation, the camera could start in a weird zone and never be able to get back to normal. Unless you did something drastic. And so this should fix that. You shouldn't be, if a player out there saw that happening, shouldn't be happening anymore.
Yeah, I'm glad that's fixed. It's not something I personally encountered, but, anything that is on here, I'm glad it's fixed because somebody encountered it, so.
Yeah, exactly. When you get a game that's played by 5 million people, it's like.
Right, exactly.
Even the rarest bug, somebody's gonna see it.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, there's been previous patch notes I've gone over before. I'm like, I haven't seen this personally, but I'm glad for whoever was experiencing it's fixed for them. So
yeah.
Another one is characters now leave stealth when being cured of blood plague to avoid some rare disasters.
Yeah, so we've got kind of a different system when you're going through the animations. that cures you from blood plague, and giving yourself a neck injection or giving somebody else that neck injection. That set of animations are handled in a completely different way from the animations that run your character around like normal. And apparently there was some kind of awkward mishmash of those two systems where if you were in stealth, the game wouldn't know what to do with you when you started being cured from blood plague. So that's ironed out now, and basically it just kind of knocks you out of stealth so that it doesn't cause the problem.
That makes sense then. Yeah, I wasn't one to use stealth a lot, in standard mode, but now in Nightmare I'm going to have to, so.
Yeah, which is, there's a couple of different fixes here to stealth, which hopefully will be very useful for people when they
exactly
get in Nightmare mode.
Nah, I was more just, kind of not really fearing anything in standard, but now I'm going to have to fear things a little more, so. But another change is stacking experience penalties can no longer reduce a character's experience rate below 25%.
Yeah, so this is illustrative of several of the different fixes that we made. A lot of them are inspired by the fact that we were working on the Choose Your Own Apocalypse update at the same time. And so in Choose Your Own Apocalypse, I think it's in Nightmare, we automatically apply an experience penalty to everyone, so everyone's skills are going up more slowly. But what we found was originally we had tuned it so that you could only get experience penalties from a few different sources. And so they would never actually stack up to remove 100% of your experience. But with the new penalty that was being added by the new difficulty modes, suddenly people were getting 0% experience and they would never, ever, ever progress. So we had to put a minimum on there. And so that minimum, it applies across the board. If we ever add anything else to the game that gives you experience penalties, don't worry, it'll never go more, get worse than a quarter speed. And so we can keep expanding the game if we want to, and we've just sort of fixed that across the board.
I'm sure that kind of applied with like Red Talon, for example, too, where they have a harder time with experience, probably.
Yeah, I think that, so I think in their particular case, we actually just gave their skills more experience increments to fill. So they weren't going to incur that, but that's the thing. It's like there's usually like 3 or 4 different ways to affect the rate at which something changes in the game, and depending on which ones you choose, you can incur all kinds of weird problems.
Well, I'm glad it's settled now. And no one's going to get 0% experience. Cause
yes, exactly.
That's not a fun way to progress. So. But the infirmary now displays the correct rate of meds usage when treating blood plague.
Yeah, that was an interesting one too. So the original game, State of Decay 1, a day lasted for 2 hours. In State of Decay 2, we actually shortened that to 90 minutes, because people were feeling a little bit stranded, at night. Like, oh, when is the sun ever going to come up? And so we shortened it up a little bit. But then that left us in this weird, awkward state where, if a day was just an hour long, it would be easy to just say, oh yeah, something that happens once a day also happens once an hour. It's really easy to say how long things take. But when your day is an hour and a half, that leaves you without a lot of really good units to use. You could say, oh, this happens once a day, but the player doesn't really know how long a day is. You could say it's once an hour, but then that's mismatched with the length of the day. And so I don't even remember exactly what the problem was with the infirmary right now. I used to know, but basically it was using a set of numbers that used one set of units, but it was saying it was using a different set of units, so it was totally inaccurate. Like it was, doing something once a day, but saying it was doing once an hour, or maybe vice versa. So we fixed it now. Whatever it says in the base screen now is accurate. That's actually, how often that it uses meds.
See, that's interesting actually, because I never would have picked that up. So whoever picked that up, I'm kind of glad they picked it up, because I never would have saw that. So.
We tried so many different ways to talk about like how big your incomes are and things like that, because you get your income. Players still get pretty confused by this, because you get your if you've got a food income from your gardens or something, right. You get that dropped twice a day, once in the morning and once in the evening. And so we used to say this is how you get 5 food per half day. But that's such a weird, awkward thing to say. That didn't make sense to a lot of people. And so then we would say, okay, you're getting 10 food a day. But then each drop is only half of it. And so players are like, it says I'm getting 10 food a day, but my drop says I only got 5. And that's actually a lot of the a lot of the feedback that we get. And I agree, it is very confusing. And unfortunately, I don't think there's an answer that doesn't have some kind of confusion involved with it. So that's where we are, but at least the infirmary is accurate now.
Well, I'm glad that's accurate now. So, hopefully, people don't see that bug anymore. But we actually have a different category now. We're moving on to some gameplay changes, and we have a bunch of community requests here. One of these requests is sneaking with a stealth skill no longer causes involuntary movement. And this is something I actually saw myself, so I actually did experience this one.
We've been hearing about this one from a lot of people. Every time we do a stream, people are like, when are you going to fix the fact that my character is constantly creeping around when I'm in stealth mode? And, it was a simple little silly bug. But we fixed it. By the time anyone listens to this, that bug should be gone. So, go back. Feel free to go back and play your stealth characters, and they shouldn't be creeping around like weirdos the whole time.
And out of curiosity, too, what was causing that? Was it like something just internally, like one slider was like wrong or something? Or?
You know what? I honestly don't remember this one because, the moment-to-moment gameplay isn't usually my area, so I don't have a lot of deep understanding of how those things work. Usually it's just anecdotal. Somebody, will describe to me what was happening, and I'll be like, oh, that was hilarious. And then I'll forget it, very soon afterwards. But, it was something very simple. Just, we kept updating the skills, as we were adding to the game and expanding it. And each time you touch something that already works, there's a good chance you're going to break some part of it you didn't think to test. And that happens constantly all the time, which is why, you have to always maintain, a big, QA team constantly playing your game. But even if you have the best testers in the world, there's going to be something nobody tries, until it gets out into the wild. So, even though, we're describing all these fixes here, I am absolutely certain there is something, in 7.0 that's busted, that we're going to find out about and have to do like a hot fix or something.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of just the nature of the beast, so.
Yeah, so we're doing our best. I mean, each time we come out with an update, and each time we find out that there are bugs, we look at, what happened to cause that bug to get out into the wild. And we put a lot of thought into our processes, and we've started, involving, the QA team a lot more in planning out these updates and, getting them involved from day one and making sure that everything we do is very testable. And so I think we've gotten a lot better over time at releasing stable updates. But, no matter how good you get, there's always this non-zero chance that something weird is going to slip through. And so you just kind of grit your teeth, you accept it, but then you commit yourself to the responsibility of when you find out about these things, you go back and then you fix them.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Kind of like you said, I mean, I think there was a patch, way early on where you said that you accidentally broke gunslinging or something, so.
Yeah, no, I've done it myself, and it was the kind of thing where it's like, I was focusing on something else. I was fixing gunslinging for some other reason, and the part of it that was broken was just, my quick little cursory test I did to make sure I didn't break it. The exact stuff that I did didn't happen to hit the situation where it was broken. And, it's impossible to fully catch all of those, but it is possible to get a lot better at it. And so that's what we've been focusing on is, trying to make our processes, better, improving, the processes that we go through here when we're developing an update, to make sure that, we're doing everything that we can to make sure that things are solid before they leave the building.
And honestly, I think it's been working. I mean, the last couple of patches, I haven't really noticed a ton of new issues, after the patches, so.
Yeah, we haven't broken the audio again, so that's good.
That's always good. That was the worst bug out of the history of the game, so.
Yeah, so, and I'm so relieved we got that. I mean, as long as that one's gone, I feel like we're on a different level now.
That was there for so long.
Oh yeah, no, it was like, the original Little Mermaid where she's like walking on knives every second that she's out of the water. It was very similar, just sort of going through the period where the audio bug was there. It was like walking on knives every day.
Definitely. But back to the gameplay changes, we have another community request. One is we improved how our characters held some firearms to make sure their hands line up with the proper grips.
So Seth Saltz, our technical animator, we didn't just sort of go through firearm by firearm and make sure the hands were lined up. He actually, created some better, tools and procedures for the animators, which are way too technical for me to understand. But he created some new options for them that made it a lot easier for them to get the hands snapped into the right positions for all of these different guns. And so you should see if players who were noticing the hands being in the wrong place on the weapons, should notice a big improvement to how that was working.
That's awesome. Yeah. I didn't really notice that because, I mean, I don't, pay attention to my hands and my guns too often, but,
now and then there was, now and then there's one that really stood out. It's like your hand would be sticking up through the pump of a shotgun or something like that. But usually they were pretty good, but they should be a lot better now.
That's awesome. Another community request actually is Clio weapons now award the correct experience types, for improving fighting specializations like striking and swordplay.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff is actually hooked up manually, like under the hood. Like we have to actually, hook up each thing to decide what kind of experience it grants. And when we added the Clio weapons, we forgot to go through that step for some of the weapons. And so they were just sitting there not giving you the right kind of experience for your advanced fighting skills. And so now they are.
Awesome. It's always good to have a correct experience for that, because I remember early on, one of the skills that I liked to use a lot was close combat, and that wasn't giving correct experience. So,
we fixed that one, I think, in, was it a couple of patches ago?
I think that was patch 3 or 4. That was pretty right. Yeah, patch 3 or 4.
Yeah, that's something, the more you try, when you can, to try to automate things like this and make it so that, once you set up a gun of, or a weapon of a certain type, it just automatically sends the right experience. But that can have its own problems too, right? When something is automatic, you can do something by accident. In this case, you have to very deliberately choose, what kind of experience you're getting from each weapon. But that that has its own problems if you forget to go through the step. There's not really one perfect way, to set things up so that you never introduce any bugs, I don't think. But yeah, we've got that one ironed out now.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear it. And our last community request of this section is your character now remembers the state of their flashlight as they get in and out of vehicles. So if you get in with your light on, you get out with your light on. Yeah,
that one, players brought that up several times, that there was just a lot of confusion about, how are these characters handling their lights? Because it seems like everyone I guess it's realistic that whenever you get into a car, if you had a flashlight attached to your lapel, you would actually turn it off because you don't want it shining on your windshield when you're driving around. But, players would be running around at night with their flashlight on. They clearly want their flashlight on. Then they get in and out of a car and the flashlight would be off again. And they'd be like, can I just decide I'm in night mode right now and not have to keep manually turning on that light? And that sounded pretty reasonable, and so we went with it.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. And I always experienced that too. So another one that is very similar that I don't think this would apply to is the car headlights themselves. Does that apply to that too?
So the car headlights themselves, they still are on when you're driving the car, and they turn off automatically when you get out. But we have had some requests recently from people asking, can we just leave the lights on when we get out? The problem with that, if we just did it the simplest possible way. The problem is, there's actually a limit to how many lights we can afford, to have going at once, like how many dynamic lights we can have. A lot of the lighting in the game is baked in a certain way so that it's a lot cheaper, at runtime. But dynamic lights, like the light attached to your chest, the light, from your car, we can only do so many of those at once without tanking our performance. And so, if you were able to, for instance, gather a dozen cars all in a circle and have them all shining their lights on each other, that would be a big problem. There's probably good solutions for that. I mean, we could probably limit the number of cars you could have headlights on.
Lights on, right.
And just like if you turn on one, we turn off the previous one. But that would take a lot of detail sort of figuring out exactly how it works. And so it's on the list now of things we might do in the future, if we get the opportunity. So we've definitely heard that feedback. But in this patch, it's just the light on your backpack strap. That's the thing that's affected.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, because it seems like something that people would like to use strategy-wise. If you're going after a play car, maybe keep your lights on for the car. It kind of shines the area bright for you so you can kind of see what's going on more. So.
Oh, yeah. I definitely can understand why people want to do it. It makes perfect sense, and it's what you'd want to do in real life, right? And that's a lot of, what people come to State of Decay 2 for, is to have sort of this simulated experience of what it might be like to try to survive in the zombie apocalypse. And so things like that, where it's like an obvious thing that people would do in reality, that by itself is a compelling argument for trying to reflect it in the game if we can. And so, yeah, the question is just, are we going to have the right resources at the right time to do that? And are we going to choose it over some other improvement that might be even more important? So we'll just have to see how things go in the future.
Awesome. But I'm glad the character part of that is fixed now, so you can keep that, lapel light on or off or however you want it. So.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that part of it myself as a player.
But the last gameplay change we have is actually one that I find very interesting for efficiency purposes. Mm-hmm. You can now actually break open rucksacks on your back while searching containers. That's kind of efficient, actually.
Yeah, so this is actually, so it turns out each version of your inventory, when you've got your inventory just up by itself, or if you've got it up next to a container, or next to a vehicle, or next to your supply locker, or you're in a vehicle and you've got it open, all of those different situations, those are effectively different menus. And so, anytime we wanted to set up an action in one of those menus, we had to remember to go through and make it work in every single version of it separately. And so in this particular case, there wasn't a strong reason why we weren't letting people break open rucksacks on their backs while they were searching a container. We just never got around to making it possible. And so now we have. And actually this particular one and another couple of improvements we've been working on behind the scenes actually inspired us to go through and actually do a full audit of all the stuff you can do in every single setting with your inventory. And we found a lot of stuff that we thought just, by default was going to be possible. Turned out wasn't happening. And so we've still got some further fixes to do along those lines.
Well, I'm glad this one is in place now, though. I mean,
Yeah,
that's definitely going to be very efficient, so.
Yeah, this is first of potentially, a few more, so.
Awesome. But next, we actually have a section that has a lot of changes that I think, are really important to highlight, and not that the other ones aren't, but like these are the ones that I think that are going to be really speaking to the player base a lot. So this section is titled Zombies, and the first one we have up is a community request where ambient zombies now actively avoid entering the safe zones around player bases, enclave bases, outposts, and other secured sites.
So this is another one that was definitely inspired by working with Dread Zones and Nightmare Zones because, I think a lot of people who played the game a bunch, they remember many times where they're just hanging out in their base and suddenly there's a zombie in the middle of their base for no apparent reason.
Yep.
And, and that's okay to deal with. It's not a huge deal. But in Nightmare Zones, having a couple of random zombies show up in your base. First off, there's a lot more zombies out there, and they're more sensitive to noise, and they'll chase you a lot further. So it was happening more often that zombies were getting into your base, and when they did, they could actually kill some of your characters. And so it became a much bigger deal once we started working at the harder difficulty levels. So we actually set it up. Peter, one of the designers, he actually set up a new thing where zombies will actively avoid being in safe zones unless they actually see you and are chasing you. So if a zombie steps into a safe zone, they'll be like, wait, am I chasing a player right now? If I'm not, then I'm just going to turn around and walk out again. So basically those safe zones that are marked out on the map should actually not have zombies in them unless you are actually leading a zombie inside or making a bunch of noise. So you can still get zombies in there, especially during a siege. You can still get zombies in there.
I was going to say that doesn't apply to hordes, I assume, right?
Yeah. So if you've got a siege that's happening at your base,
right,
of course
okay.
The zombies are all going to come inside.
Right.
It's just the ambient wandering zombies that don't have any particular target in mind. They will turn around if they start getting into a safe zone, just to kind of, simulate that idea that you've actually cleared out this area around your base and it's relatively safe unless something bad happens, like you drive a noisy car up, fire, and then you get out and start firing a bunch of guns. Yeah, some zombies will chase you in. But yeah, if they don't know you're there, then they'll just wander somewhere else.
No, that's really something that's going to be refreshing as a player because I can't tell you the amount of times, I'm searching through my locker, I'm picking my load out, and then all of a sudden a zombie grabs you from behind. I'm like, what the heck? Like, I'm searching through my locker. You're like, jeez.
Yeah. So. And you can see it. It's one of those things where when it happened to us, we're like, well, that's not exactly what we had in mind. But it was really easy to prioritize other fixes over that, right? Because, usually it wasn't a big deal. Okay, a zombie attacked me. That was a little annoying. I'll kill it, and then I'll move on. There were other problems that felt bigger, right? But now that that actually could result in character losses and things like that, we're like, okay, maybe we should actually fix this one now.
No, it definitely makes sense. In Nightmare, that's going to be a lot more deadly, so I'm glad that's fixed. But another fix that's really important, I think, is Plague Hearts now drop more loot in addition to the usual plague samples. And it says in parentheses here, let's not think too hard about how these items got here.
Yeah, that was that last little comment was added by Andy Collins, and he's got some ideas for why the plague card might be full of weapons and consumables and things like that. But yeah, so basically, once we started really ramping up the difficulty, we realized that plague hearts. We didn't want them to become drudgery, right? We didn't want it to become like, oh man, every single time I fight a plague heart, I'm risking my character's lives. It takes a ton of resources. It's really hard. And we wanted people to feel rewarded at the end of it. More so than, plague samples, you can get plague samples anywhere, right? And so we wanted people to feel really rewarded for going through this difficult process. We didn't want it to just be like, ugh, I have to do 12 of these or whatever the number is. And so, Brian went through and he came up with loot tables, for all of the plague hearts. And so, there's some, pretty basic loot you can get from them, in standard zones. And then in Dread Zone and Nightmare Zones, you can actually get some pretty decent, rare gear from killing a lot of plague hearts.
Yeah, that's something really unique and cool that I haven't seen yet either because I was involved in the beta and that wasn't out there in the beta yet.
This was one of the last features we added. Right at the last minute, Brian was like, "Can I please check this in just real quick?" and he managed to sneak it in right before we cut it off.
So I mean, I know people by the time they hear this, they probably already tested it out, but do you have any examples for what might be available in Dread Zone or Nightmare Zone in the plague hearts?
We're probably going to need to ask Brian about that. So I think he's going to be on the stream by the time this podcast comes out. We'll already have our stream up on the YouTube channel. So let's make sure we ask Brian that question because he's the one who could definitely give you a sense better than I could.
Yeah, people would probably be interested to hear like, oh, what's available in Nightmare? What's available in Dread possibly. So
yeah, exactly. But maybe, oftentimes when we ask Brian questions like that, he wants to leave it a mystery. So that might very well be the answer that we get.
Yeah, I'm cool with that too. So I'll investigate it myself then. But another change is we fixed a rare case where you can hit a zombie with an unexploded grenade and knock all their limbs out. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, so I never actually saw that one happening, and I'm not really the expert in this, and so I don't remember precisely what the cause is. I could imagine it might have been something like you assign the kind of damage that the grenade does when it explodes, and maybe that kind of damage also gets assigned to the grenade when it's in its unexploded state,
Right.
Or something like that. There was something accidental. It probably wasn't that exact thing, but there was something accidental that was causing, certain grenades. If you threw it at a zombie and it just hit the zombie directly, all of its arms and legs would fall off. And that's, hilarious, but not really the intent.
Yes.
So we fixed that one.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I can just picture how hilarious that beanie's throw grenade. Oh, his legs fell off.
It's like you're bowling or something. It's like,
Yeah.
I expect it to make a bowling pin sound when it happens.
Right. So that's nice that that's fixed, though. But another really important fix, I think, is we fixed a bug that was making plague hearts too sensitive to explosions. So you can now expect killing a plague heart in the standard zone to take approximately 7 soda can bombs, 4 pipe bombs, 3 frag grenades, or 2 C4 charges.
Yeah, so apparently there was just an accident that was causing all of those, sources of explosive damage to do more than expected damage to plague hearts, and so people were killing them too easily. And that's something that you notice when you're trying to tune, higher difficulty levels. Is if something is working a little bit too well, that stands out, and so we were able to catch that one and fix it. So it should be a little bit tougher to fight plague hearts now.
Awesome, yeah. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's supposed to be where Dread has less plague hearts, but they're harder to beat, and then Nightmare has more in number, but they're still roughly the same difficulty as standard.
That's about how I understand Brian describing it. So I believe that's probably true.
Okay. So that should be interesting, though. Maybe we'll have I'm just guessing on a number here, so this isn't official, but maybe we'll have 20 plague hearts in Nightmare. That'd be kind of crazy. I have to take out 20 now or something. So
it is some number that's higher than normal. I can't tell you which one what exact number it is.
Yeah, that'll be fun to test out. So I can't wait to test that out.
Yeah.
But that is it for our zombie fixes. So we actually have a next section is radio commands, and in this section, the item that triggers sniper support radio command can now be used from within a vehicle.
Yes, we did this pass in the previous update where we made it so that certain consumables like painkillers and stuff could be used while you're riding in a vehicle. And we realized a little bit too late that the sniper support command that it gives you a consumable that you use to trigger it when you're ready to go. And we realized there's no reason why that couldn't be done within a vehicle. So now it can.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean it's not a radio command I use often, but anyone that does use it often, that's going to be nice for them. So
yep. You just drive around and let zombies get shot outside the car.
Exactly. That's kind of fun, actually. Now that you say it that way, I kind of want to try it. But the Blood Plague Assistance Supply Drop now contains the intended 2 rucksacks instead of only 1.
Yeah, this was just a simple error in the way that the data worked. There's the way that we set up the data. I think we can determine the number of items that show up in a stack, but if it doesn't work on rucksacks the same way it works on other things, and so we intended to have there be 2 rucksacks in the Blood Plague Assistance Supply Drop, and only 1 was showing up because of that. So QA caught it just a little bit too late, and so we're throwing that improvement in here.
Awesome. Definitely glad it's in there too.
Because we did this update, I think the previous update, we did a bunch of changes and revisions to all of the Enclave benefits, which included the Blood Plague Assistance Supply Drop. So all of the Enclave benefits got raised in power. And so we tried to raise the power of the Blood Plague Assistance Supply Drop, but failed. And so now we've succeeded.
Awesome. I'm glad that's, updated. And honestly, my favorite one out of this section is the Roadside Assistance one. Supply drop can now contain multiple toolkits and gas cans instead of only 1 each because, using that normally before this patch, it felt kind of weird that, I got 1 can. Like, seriously? So.
This is all you're doing? Yeah. So that was not intended. The plan was to have there be multiples. And again, it's the same just misunderstanding about how the data worked. And so now it should work the way we intended it.
Awesome. I'm glad, because, I'm sure other ones, people use this a lot more than I do, but Roadside Assistance is probably the one that I use most out of those 3. So that's why I'm a little bit partial to that one.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah. It's designed to be pretty, pretty useful in a pinch.
Exactly. But next up, we have the multiplayer section. And I'm actually going to...
This is your favorite one coming up, isn't it?
I'm going to skip that one for now and just go to that second. So
okay, go for it.
So one of the multiplayer changes is we reduce instances where a client driving a car could be tethered to the host, then arrive in the middle of an obstacle and immediately explode.
Yeah, so I never actually saw this one happen myself, but anytime usually we try to state our patch notes very definitively, like this is happening, this is fixed. But this one we said we reduced instances. That means that we fixed,
Yes.
this should happen less often now. We found some of the things that could cause it to happen, and we fixed those. We don't know if we found all of the causes. And so it could be possible that getting tethered to the host while you're driving a car could still result in hilarious explosions. And so let us know if it does, and we'll see what we can do. We know that there are some currently unresolved bugs out there about cars exploding, especially cars that are parked at your base, suddenly duplicating and exploding all over the place. We have not yet found the cause of those. And so, it makes us nervous to say that we've fixed cars exploding, because
Right.
cars exploding seems to be a problem that's pretty hard to chase down. But we've at least made it happen less often. So hopefully that'll be good for now, and we're going to keep working on it.
Yeah, and I'll say too that in standard, a lot of times when things like that happens, it's pretty hilarious, and people don't really bat an eye about it too much. But I will say that in Nightmare, it's probably going to be a little bit less hilarious because you really need those cars and you don't have a lot of toolkits on you. So
Yeah, I don't have a lot of toolkits, and you don't have a lot of cars, and so
Yeah,
it's a much bigger deal.
definitely. So that's nice. It's at least improved. So. But as you alluded to, my favorite change of this entire patch actually is what we're about to talk about now. This is one of the multiplayer fixes.
Mhm.
This is a community request, and inactive characters in a client's community now heal at the same rate as the host's inactive characters. This should help keep you going longer during co-op games, and depending on the host facilities, this healing can affect health loss, trauma, and injuries.
Yeah, so for a long time, we just had this weird sort of debate in our heads about how to handle when a client comes and joins somebody else's game, how to handle their healing. And for a while we were thinking, well, they can just use the host facilities to manually heal their characters if they need to. But that's expensive, and it's not really the way that people usually play the game. If we want people to be able to play the game the way they're used to playing it, which is you play as one character, that character gets pretty run down, but then you swap them out for another character when they're ready to rest.
Right.
And while you're swapped to that other character, your first character can heal up and get ready for the next time they're needed. And so we realized that's the pattern that people are used to. And so that's something we should support for the clients in hosted games. And so now that's how it works. But because we don't actually know what's in your base, when you're out as a guest in somebody else's game, we don't know what's going on at your base. And we don't know, we don't really have access to all the information it would take to heal you according to the rules that you've set up back at your home base. So what we did was we just figure, you're a guest in this other person's community, so you get to use their stuff. So whatever healing abilities that host community has, what kind of infirmary they've built, what kind of improvements they've got, you use that while you're in their game.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I have to say, too, that this change is, really game-changing for a lot of players, I think, because, especially a newer player that has, like, a smaller community, maybe, say you have, like, a friend that's, just getting in the game, they just started the game, and they only have, like, 3 or 4 characters, and you're playing, like, a long session with them, and all those characters get fatigued or injured. They keep switching characters. Like, wait, my character's not healed. Like, I have no characters left that aren't healed anymore. So for veteran players, you probably have like, a 10-person community. So it's not as big of a deal because you always have more characters to roll between. But for a smaller communities, it really makes a difference like this.
Yeah, and especially once we get into the Nightmare Zone, and I think it becomes a lot harder to maintain those larger
Right.
communities. People will want to be able to play their smaller communities and have them be viable. So
Exactly. Yeah. I don't know yet if I'm going to do a 10-person community in Nightmare. I mean, I might just stick to, a small, succinct pack of 5 people that are 5, really awesome survivors. I might do that instead. We'll see.
might be simpler. Though,
Exactly.
You might want to have a deep bench just for when the ferals come out.
That's true. That's true. But I'm really happy with this change. This is definitely my number one. If I was giving a number one on this patch notes list, this would be my number one personally.
Well, yeah, a lot of work went into it. It's one of those things where, anything in multiplayer is 5 times as complicated as the same thing would be in single player. And so, we had programmers sort of delving in there, trying to find all the weird little edge cases that can happen because of, multiplayer, issues. And I think they got it fixed pretty good. So I'm looking forward to seeing what people think.
Awesome. I can't wait to try that out now. I'm even more excited for Nightmare now. So, but our next section we have is missions. And in this section, we have a community request that we fix a player reported a bug where a sniper rifle in one of the Eagle Eye missions was arriving with way more rounds in it than a magazine can hold.
Yeah, so you guys remember when the 50 caliber rifles all got their magazines scaled down? The problem was in that mission, you're scripted to receive a 50 caliber rifle, and when we're using our mission system, when we script for you to receive a gun, we also write in the number, we type in the number manually, how many rounds are going to be in that gun. And so the number that was typed in for that mission was based on the old magazine size, which was enormous. Yeah. And so once the magazine size went down, it was still showing, like, I think that rifle usually contains like 4 or 5 bullets max, and now it was showing up with like 12. And so it's like you had a disposable extended magazine in the rifle when you first get it, but then you can never use that extended magazine again. And so it was just an oversight. Just, we changed the weapons, but just it didn't occur to us to go comb back through all the missions and make sure that none of them were showing up with too many rounds. And so that's fixed now.
That makes sense. I'm glad that's fixed now. I haven't done that mission in a while, but when I do that again, it'll be nice to have it fixed. So.
It's just a minor thing, but every little fix, it's kind of fun to talk about what you're doing. So it goes in the patch notes.
Absolutely. And then also with missions, this is actually one that I literally just experienced, I think, yesterday.
Oh, wow.
Where we fixed a bug where it was causing bloater deaths to not be counted properly for some mission objectives, because I had one of those missions where a follower asked you, hey, can you help me kill some bloaters? And I killed 2 out of 3 bloaters, but the last one wasn't counting for a little while, and it took me a little while to get one to count.
Yep. So, I wasn't particularly privy to that one, so I don't know what the cause was. But yeah, I'm glad to see it fixed. It's rough for a mission designer, to watch one of their own missions fail because some objective didn't count and they don't know why. And so for me as one of the mission designers, it's good to see things like that, get shored up.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool mission too, so I'm glad it's fixed now because, it was a fun mission to do. Just go around killing a couple bloaters, so.
Yeah. The simple ones are they don't get enough credit sometimes.
Absolutely. I always like that one too. It's kind of off topic, but where you have to shoot the arms and legs off zombies. That's kind of fun too.
Yeah,
that's a fun mission. But we have a section next called Other Stuff. So I guess it's just kind of like a conglomerate that didn't really fit into other categories per se.
Yeah, I could have said miscellaneous, but Other Stuff is just a more fun phrase to say.
It works. But we have a community request. We fixed terrain and geometry in various places, including some called out by players to prevent folks from unexpectedly crashing vehicles or getting stuck.
Yeah, this is just an ongoing thing that we're always doing. We always, when people find places where it looks like I can drive in this place, but actually there's a weird piece of collision that I wouldn't expect that, kicks my car off in a weird direction or gets me stuck or something, whenever we find stuff like that, we try to fix it. And so that's just kind of an ongoing process. We're always doing that. And so you'll find most of our patch notes say something like that, somewhere towards the end.
Yeah, that makes sense. I remember something like that in a lot of patch notes usually, so. Another one is we fixed a number of instances where characters could fall through the world.
Yep. That's just, whenever we find out about a place like that, we try to fix it. And so right. I think we fixed a few more places like that this time.
And is that specifically to do with like the NPCs you have to talk to and sometimes you can't find them? That kind of thing? I'm
not sure. It probably was actually a range of different things, from the player being able to fall through the world to NPCs not being there and you don't know why and it's because they fell through the world. I don't know exactly which bugs we fixed with that particular note, but we've had all kinds of different things happening, so it could have been any of those.
Well, if the next update, if you give us a shovel, we can just kind of dig for them, just dig under the world. And
I have had cases where there was a thing in State of Decay Lifeline. The way our system worked, we couldn't have a character speak unless they were physically spawned into the world, but we had a lot of characters that only existed on the radio. And so what we had to do was find a place outside the reachable area of the map where we could just spawn those characters. So I chose a neighborhood and I just put spawn points for all of the radio characters and I spawned them just standing in a line over there and figured no one will ever see this. But of course, one of our intrepid, community members, Mon Prince Cyclope, he got over a wall somewhere and drove out and he found where all the radio characters were having a party, off in a distant awesome. Community somewhere. So, if you give that guy a shovel, he'll probably be able to dig down and find all the players, the characters who fell through the world too.
That's a really cool story, actually. I wish I was there to see that.
Yeah, no, I think he might have posted a video of it or something, and yeah, it was, I watched it and I just cringed the whole time, like, yep, that's where they are. Maybe I should have hidden them inside the houses. Yeah. But, yeah.
Hey, they were having a good party, he wanted to join them, so.
Yeah, he found apparently where the doghouse base was, and yeah.
Exactly. But another fix in that section, we made some improvements to hostile human AI, particularly around the base.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of details around this, except I just know that a lot more focus was put onto human versus human fighting while we were working on the higher difficulty zones, because they were going to get tougher to fight. It was going to matter a lot more how you approach them, and so there were some behaviors of the human AI that were not very helpful. That they managed to sort of corral them back into behaving the way they wanted to. So I don't have a ton of detail on that, but it should be the humans should behave a little bit more reasonably when you're attacking their bases.
No, that's awesome because it's going to be a lot harder to beat them now. So you want them to actually pose that challenge that you're looking for.
Yeah,
so.
Especially in Nightmare where they can take off most of your health with one shot. It's
exactly. It's crazy. Yeah. I almost died several times to humans when I tried out the beta. So. But I'm kind of curious, actually, that hostile human AI, is that sort of the same exact AI as your follower NPCs, or is that a different system altogether?
I think they've got a lot in common, because they all fight the same way. And, a hostile human could be confronted by a zombie at any time, and so, and need to fight them the same way that, your allies do. But, they're often doing different things, right? Like your allies are usually, they're trying to stick with you while fighting any zombies that get nearby, whereas the hostile guys are usually, defending some kind of territory.
Right.
Or sometimes we actually secretly under the hood make them your followers, so they'll just chase you anywhere and fight you and insist on taking you down. So, there's a few different things they can do, but I believe that they're basically using the same AI. They're just usually doing somewhat different things.
Yeah, and part of the reason I asked too is because I have heard feedback from some people in the community that they don't think that the follower NPCs have, as good AI as the hostiles do. So,
interesting. Yeah, I think that it all, I am not an AI programmer or designer, and so there's a lot of details about the system that I'm ignorant of, and so anything I say about it could likely be wrong. I think if Quinn or Peter was listening to me right now, they'd be like, "You're saying everything wrong already." Yeah. So I just know that they made some improvements because they weren't doing quite what they wanted to, and now they're doing a little bit more closer to what they want to. So
awesome. So. That's great that happened, and hopefully it provides a great experience in Nightmare. I mean, I know the experience I had with them in beta was definitely challenging, so I can say that much. But the last change in other stuff is we made further improvements to multiplayer stability.
That's another one of the just sort of ongoing efforts, whenever we find a way that we can improve that and have people drop out less, run into less problems, less performance issues when they're playing in multiplayer, we try to make those changes whenever we can. So a few more.
Makes sense. But our last section is actually technically the first section you're going to see when you see these patch notes, but I saved it for last because I think this has a lot of, really key things that people are going to love in here. So I'm going to save the most key things for last, and we'll talk about some of the other ones first. So one of the community requests that came into this is you can now select which map you want to play on when creating a new community, entering a new zone, or switching to a new map. This
is one of our most requested features, and the only embarrassing thing about it is that it took us this long to get into the game. We actually intended to ship originally with this feature, but it kept getting prioritized behind other things. But yeah, the basic idea is anytime you would be switching maps now, whether you're starting a brand new community, whether you're moving maps, or whether you're changing difficulty modes, which effectively moves you to a new map. It refreshes the map that you're on, even if you stay in the same place. A little window pops up that lets you actually choose whether you want to be in Cascade Hills, Drucker County, Meager Valley, or if you want to let the game select random, which is what it used to always do. And so now you can, we've had a lot of players that were getting back to us saying, I've got favorite maps that I really want to play on, and it frustrates me that I can put all this effort into setting up my perfect new community, but I still can't even decide what map I'm on. And sometimes, the very first thing I have to do is get my, community built up to the point where I can change maps just to get where I wanted to start in the first place. And we realized, that is a pretty frustrating situation, for people to get into. So, now that shouldn't be an issue. Now, no matter how it is you're getting into a new map, you should always be able to decide which one it is, while you're on the way in.
Yeah, I think that is going to be a change that a lot of people are looking for and is going to be nice for them. But just to be clear real quick, to clarify, when you actually research new territories now in the standard mode, you basically, if you say you're on Meager, right, you have to actually go to the certain, area of the road that actually takes you to Drucker if you're going to Drucker. Would you actually be able to go to that certain area of road that takes you to Drucker and go anywhere now?
You know what? That's a question I should have asked somebody before coming on the podcast. So all I know is you can definitely choose in each instance. I don't know if we just, in that particular case where we actually were giving the player the ability to choose already, we might have left that one alone because it was already kind of working. I can't promise you if that changed it up.
Gotcha.
But definitely the times where it was always always random. Like when you are, starting a brand new, community from scratch. You can now select.
That makes sense. I was just kind of curious about that because, like, if you're driving to go to Drucker, then you're like, oh, I can go to Cascade too if I want. Interesting.
Yeah, I can imagine it going any of the possible ways. And so, sorry, I don't have the specific details on that.
No, that's fine. That's fine. We'll have to test that in game and see how it goes. So.
Yeah.
But another community request is we fixed a player-reported bug that was causing elements of the leader selection interface to persist after the interface was closed. Yeah, that was a really frustrating one. We, people have been talking about that one for a few months now, and it was rough to see people, just chunks of the UI just staying on the screen longer than they're supposed to. Just always feels really weird and awkward, and so I'm glad to have that one in the bag. It's not happening anymore. Yeah, that one I didn't really experience, but I mean, I'm glad it's fixed rather than it was, so.
Yeah, I think you had to actually leave the game entirely and come back in order to make it go away, which was,
That makes sense, because I didn't do that a lot. When I leave the game, I'm usually done for the day, and then I go back in when I'm going back in, so. So that makes sense why I didn't see it that much. But another one is when you complete a legacy, you're now returned to the main menu rather than being prompted to immediately start a new game.
So this is kind of a window into game designer psychology, which is we worried a lot, like when we were first planning State of Decay 2, that when somebody finished their first playthrough of the game, and they got their first legacy boon, we were worried they wouldn't realize that you could actually start a new game, that the intent was for you to play through the game multiple times and collect all of the legacy boons. We were really worried people would miss that. It would go over their heads. They'd be like, oh, I guess I'm done with the game. I guess there's no more the game could possibly offer me. And they would just, gallop off into the sunset and miss like 2/3 of the content of the game.
That makes sense, yeah.
And so we were very, very nervous about it. And so we actually, we set up the flow so that people were basically required to start a new game, practically required to start a new game, whenever they finished an old one. And, after, over time, though, we kind of realized people who are playing the game now, they get it. They know what the game is that they're playing. There's no mystery there. And actually, a lot of the time when you finish a playthrough, you kind of do, that's the perfect time to kind of sit back, relax, go, eat something and not be playing a game anymore. And so forcing them to begin the next game was actually feeling kind of awkward and weird. So we decided to change it up and just make it so you go back to the main menu, and if you want to start a new game, you go right ahead and initiate it, and we're not going to tell you what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, I can definitely speak from my experience, too. I will like this change, too, because I felt that as well, where I finished a legacy. I'm like, oh, well, I want to start a new game, but I didn't want to start it this second. Like, I wanted to come back later and do it. So.
Yeah, so your concern has been heard, and it should be a little bit more convenient for you now.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. But another change that we have, notifications for positive events like influence rewards are now flashier and easier to notice.
Yeah, so we actually added some new influence rewards specifically for Dread Zones and Nightmare Zones because the game was so grueling. People were feeling like they just were not being rewarded enough for all the good things that they did. So we added some new influence benefits, but while we were looking at it, we realized these are subtle. Like, we could add the benefits, we could add the bonuses, but if nobody ever noticed the bonuses, it really wasn't having the impact we wanted it to have. So our UX team put some time into seeing if they could make those notifications flashier and more orange than they used to be. So it should be easier to tell when you've gotten a prize now.
And are you able to call out any of those new influence rewards?
I don't have them. I believe that some of them were for killing freaks. That maybe things that wouldn't have been a huge reward before are a reward now. But I'm not the one who implemented that, and so I can't give you a lot of details. Maybe that's another question we should ask Brian.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, because I know, like, for example, when you kill the streamer, it's 5 influence, or when you kill a juggernaut, it's 50. So maybe that got increased a little bit.
Possibly something along those lines. I don't want to promise anything because I don't know the details in that system.
Fair enough. But one of the ones I was kind of saving that I think is very interesting, and I'm kind of, interested to hear your take on what this exactly means, is when you are low on a particular resource, rucksacks containing that resource will pulse to draw attention to themselves.
So this was a thing where a lot of people who were playing Dread Zones and Nightmare Zones were actually dealing with resource shortages for the first time. They had never actually dealt with it before. Because, if you're scavenging consistently in a standard zone, usually it's not that hard to stay ahead of your community's needs. And so people who were suddenly, dealing with shortages all the time, one thing that they had an issue with, it was actually hard for them to keep track of it. They didn't always know what they had a shortage in at any given time, or they would grab the wrong rucksack and realize, oh wait, no, I had a desperate need for something else. And so we wanted to really make sure that when you have a shortage of something, you can really feel it and you know what to do about it. And so now when you open up a container and it's got rucksacks in it, if one or more of the rucksacks contains something that you are in the red, for at your base, there'll be a subtle little pulsating effect on it saying, hey, look over here. This is the thing that you need the most of. And so it should help players sort of habitually without having to do a bunch of research and open up their base screen to see what they're low on. Hopefully it should like help people notice what they actually need to focus on when they're playing in a higher difficulty mode.
And have you seen what that effect looks like? Is it like one example, you have a quest like, oh, I want you to find a portable generator. Is it where it shows like that little orange icon showing you need this?
No, it's not it's not the orange icon because that orange icon, it means specific things in the missions, right? And so we didn't want to compete with that and confuse people. If they're in the middle of a mission and they open up a container and it contains a rucksack that they need and also a mission item, we didn't want that to be confusing. So it actually is more like it's like an animated pulsation on the icon that it does just a little bit of movement to get your attention and make it stand out from the other icons.
Awesome. I'm glad that's there. I'm curious to try that out and see how it looks. So, when I'm jumping into Nightmare and I'm, running low on food or something, I'll go check it out. So, but we basically have one more, big note here for the user experience. And this is one that I was particularly saving for last because I think it's going to be something that a lot of people that were upset on a previous update will be, very happy to have this there. So basically what this is, it's a community request where we've added a new character manager that allows you to view and edit your collection of legacy survivors each time you complete a legacy. Now your characters are not deleted behind the scenes when you complete a legacy and exceed the 50 character cap. Instead, each time you add new characters to the pool, you have a chance to manually select which ones to keep and which ones to dismiss.
Yeah, this one was one that we, there's this whole long story that goes along with this one where, originally we left the size of your legacy pool unbounded. You could just keep adding characters to it and your save file would keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger forever. And, that's never a good idea when you're doing game development to let something get bigger forever. There's usually a problem with it. And in this case, yeah, there was. If somebody, if they legacied a bunch of times and they filled up their character pool to, huge proportions, their save game got so large that we literally couldn't manage it anymore. And their game would stop saving and they wouldn't be able to really make any progress in the game at all. And so that was extremely broken. And once we found out that was going on, we had to fix it fast. And so we implemented a limit on the number of legacy survivors you could have, but then there were a lot of players who were carefully managing their legacy pools, and when that limit kicked in, it deleted a bunch of their characters. And that was kind of, it was like a very cringy and apologetic moment for us when that happened. And so we went back and we looked at what we had, and we at first, we had some early ideas about how we could go about making it easier for players to be able to manage this stuff, so that they could, be warned when they were about to lose characters or somehow give them a little bit more control. And we pitched some of these ideas around, but then, Susan Olenek, our, UX designer, she was like, hold on, wait a minute. Why are you guys coming up with Band-Aid ideas? What's the right way to solve this? Is there a good way to solve this instead of just trying to, do sort of quickie solution, which is a lot of the time, usually that's all you can afford to do. But Susan was very insistent. She's like, let's figure out what the right way to solve this is first, and then decide if we need to do a quickie Band-Aid. And so she, got us all into a room, and we walked through the problem and sort of drew up, what the UX for this would look like. And actually, once everyone looked at it, they're like, you know what, this is actually not all that hard. Our UI artist, Krista, was like, yeah, I can totally make that in a couple of days. And, the programmer, Lewis, was like, oh yeah, no, this won't take long to implement at all. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank you, Susan, for saving all of our lives. Because, we would have come up with something, totally cheap because we thought we had to. But because she made us go through the process of actually figuring out what the right solution was, we realized, actually, you know what? We can do it right. So there's an entirely new menu in the game now. So whenever you complete a legacy and you've got extra characters, and you can't keep them all, we bring you to the screen where you see on the left side your characters that you're bringing into the legacy pool that have just completed their playthrough, and then on the right side you see all the characters you've already got, and you go through and you mark all the characters. Basically, you have to mark characters to delete until you get the number down to 50, and once you get the number down to 50, you can continue. But until you get the number down to 50, you can't. And so it leaves it up to players to decide exactly who stays and exactly who goes. And while you're in that interface, if you want to go down lower than 50 and really carefully curate who it is you're keeping so that it's easier when you're starting a new community to cycle through the characters that you actually care about, you can do that too. So you've got the freedom to delete as many characters as you want, or to just keep them right at the maximum of 50. It's up to you, and you've got all of the interface that you need to in order to really understand what's going on and get through it. So I'm really, really pleased with what Susan and Krista and Lewis came up with, and so I think players are really going to like it too, and hopefully the pleasantness of this interface will make up for some of the pain that they went through, that players went through with some of the previous patches to the game.
Yeah, I'm really excited to try this out myself, and it sounds like such a cool system now where I actually want to, just go over 50 just to try it out, like actually curate my community. Okay, I don't want you, like just to try it out. So it sounds really cool to try that out.
Well, my favorite part of the interface is whenever you select a character for deletion, we don't just put some dry little mark saying, oh, this character's going away. We actually put a big bloody skull on them. Because you're basically taking them out back and shooting them. So that, I don't remember, I think it might have been Krista who came up with that, and it's great. So, the more,
you're probably like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it.
Yeah, just the more bloodthirsty the game is, I think the better off it is. So, yeah.
That's awesome. And just for clarification, too, I believe this is not the way it works, but let's say you have, 35 people in your community, and you complete a legacy with 5 people in your community. It goes to 40, obviously. That menu will not pop up, correct?
You know what? Now that you're asking the question, I don't remember whether we pop it up or not. We might pop it up every single time just so you can...
Okay.
In fact, I think... Okay. I'm terrified of being wrong, but I think what we decided was that we want you to see it every time so that you know it's there and you know it's coming. Because if we only waited until you had over 50 characters, then it would be a big surprise, and you wouldn't even know, that was a thing. And suddenly we're springing this big decision on you right at the last minute at the end of your game. So I believe we actually send you through that process every time so that you can get used to it and understand how the constraints work. But don't quote me on that. Actually, I guess being on a podcast is technically quoting me. But if I'm wrong, I'm terribly sorry. I believe that's how it works, though.
Awesome. I'm definitely excited to try that out. And honestly, that seems like a better way to do it anyways, because then you can kind of, self-curate your community as you get up to 50. So you can kind of hand pick the 50 survivors you want as you go up to 50.
The longer we talk about it, the more convinced I am that that's how it works. And if that's not how it works, it kind of makes me want to make it be how it works. So if that's not how it works, stay tuned for future updates.
Awesome. But, I think this is a really great patch, and I think there's a lot of really cool things in here. So, not only do we get the Nightmare Zone and Dread Zone, which I think are going to be huge game changers for the longevity of State of Decay 2, I think, this patch is going to do that as well. There's a lot of key changes in here, like that, like the multiplayer fix with the healing that I love. We can heal in co-op. That's going to be awesome as well. So there's a lot of really awesome fixes in here. I think they're going to be great for the longevity of the game.
Well, thank you. This process of, getting feedback from the community, finding out what's working and what's not working, and then being able to sort of actively respond to that feedback is one of my favorite, things about working in the game industry in this generation is the fact that we can keep going back and keep making improvements and changes based on what the audience is experiencing with the game, and not just on what we imagine they're going to want in advance. And so we're trying to improve all of our methodology around this stuff. We're trying to find better ways for us to really collect, get our finger on the pulse of what people are hoping for. We're trying to figure out, exactly the best, process for deciding what updates to make and when. And so hopefully we'll get better and better at this because, we want this franchise to continue for a long time. And, that means we're going to need to nurture a player base that trusts us and stays with us and really believes that we have their best interest at heart. And so that means we have to do a lot of listening. It means we have to do a lot of put some very serious structures in place to make sure that we're paying attention to what the community wants. And even though we can't, we definitely can't always give the community exactly what it asks for. Sometimes there's very good reasons why we can't. We should at least be making all of our decisions knowing what the community wants. And because that's probably, knowing your audience is probably the number one most important thing for building any work of art. And so if we're doing that better, it makes every part of our job better.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm glad that, that you guys feel that way and that Undead Labs takes this approach because this approach is really what gives us, community members of State of Decay, the great feelings we have about this game because this game is something that, has built a really great community around it. And, I think I speak for most of us that, I love being a part of this community. So thank you.
Well, so do we. So, we're a part of it just like you guys are. And so, you guys definitely do plenty of your share to make that experience great for us. So. It really does help to have such a, positive and supportive community that, that we get a lot of feedback about the things that aren't working, but, a lot of the times it's couched in kind and supportive language that is just unheard of on the internet. So.
And I do have to say, too, as an aside, April, Undead Trials 4 and Nightmare Road, I can't wait for that.
That's going to be a lot of fun. And
that's going to be fun to see.
Yeah, and so, we're going to keep trying to support the game. Hopefully, we can do another one of these patch notes, podcasts sometime in the near future, and we're going to keep working on it.
Awesome. I'd love to do that. But before we end, I'll just quickly go over my newest items real quick again. Mm-hmm. The next podcast we do is going to be Saturday, April 6th. It's either going to be on Generation Zero or the next installment in our Dead by Daylight series. Basically, whatever one I don't do on that date will be the following Saturday. And the next stream I do is going to be Sunday, 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Time. That is probably going to be Generation Zero, because by the time you're hearing this, I've already done a couple streams of State of Decay in the new Nightmare mode, and I've only done one on Generation Zero, so I'll probably do a second stream on Generation Zero that day. But I could do State of Decay that day and switch it up. But the State of Decay Nightmare mode one will be on Tuesday. I'm going to do Tuesday again for sure, I think. And I might do a double stream on Sunday to do that instead. But that being said, Geoffrey, how can people find you and get a hold of you if they want to?
So I'm at Rangatang on Twitter. And I'm also at the Undead Labs Discord if you want to look that up. I think we're actually making it, at some point, we're going to make that thing so that you can search and find it. So it's easier for people to get there. I also post a lot on the State of Decay group on Facebook. So if you want to get in contact with me, those are a lot of the ways to do it. And also twitch.tv/UndeadLabs or mixer.com/UndeadLabs. Or YouTube.com. Is it /UndeadLabs? I don't even know what the URL is.
I believe
YouTube.
it is, yes.
But go to any of those places. We do our stream every week. I host most of those streams. And so if you want to, come and chat with me live, that's a place to do it. So there's all kinds of places. I mean, we do everything we can to try to be available to the audience so that we can, so that we can get the feedback that we need.
Yeah, and if you show up on Mixer too, I'll be in the chat on Mixer usually. That's where I hang out most of the time. But
he answers the questions that I don't have the time to answer. So
yes, so if you have extra questions, I might be able to help you out in the Mixer chat. So, but if you want to get a hold of me, you can do so at theblaisexperience@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter or my Xbox gamer tag at Blaise XPerience. That's capital BLAISE, capital XPERIENCE. We are also on YouTube if you want to check us out there. We do have a Discord as well. That will be in the show notes, so definitely check that out if you want to get in touch with me offline. Discord and Twitter is probably where I'm most active, so you can probably reach me there the fastest. And YouTube is probably where I'm the least active. So if you have a comment on YouTube or something, I will get back to it. Just it probably will take a little longer than Twitter or Discord. But if you want to find the podcast, you're obviously listening to it right now. But if you want to find a different way than you are right now, then it's on Stitcher, it's on iTunes, Spotify, Radio Public, Blueberry, Podbean, Google Podcasts, basically any directory you can think of, with the exception of iHeartRadio. So hopefully one of these days I could say, it is on iHeartRadio, but so far it's not. So any other directory besides that.
I never heard of half of those, so that's great.
Exactly. So hopefully that's, a good catalog for people. So. But thank you, Geoffrey, for coming on again, and hopefully we can have you back for patch 8.0 when that ever happens.
That's my hope.
So that'll be a lot of fun. But thank you so much for coming on, and I really appreciate being here.
Yeah, same here.
And thank you, as always, to our audience. Thank you for listening to the Blaise XPerience.